Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I believe it is more than proper at this juncture to add my voice to the debate on the motion. Be it resolved that Parliament authorizes the Minister for Finance to borrow US $29 million from the International Monetary Fund for the purpose of financing recurrent expenditure and capital spending during the fiscal year 2020-2021. Mr. Speaker, to ensure that there is no ambiguity in my position and the position of members on this side of the House, I wish to accentuate that we believe that that entire sum should be spent on the most vulnerable people of this country. And that is the point that we are making. We are not suggesting in any way, Mr. Speaker, that the government should not accept the loan from the IMF to support St. Lucians. We are saying the entire sum should be allocated towards dealing with the most vulnerable in our country, Mr. Speaker. That's right. Mr. Speaker, the question is about the borrowing of recurrent expenditure and capital spending. Is it a fair request, especially at this time when we are grappling with the objective reality of the COVID-19 pandemic? Mr. Speaker, in answering this question, we must give consideration to the following questions. What is the current environment in which St. Lucians live? 2, how did we arrive at the position that we're in to determine whether there is a basis and to what extent we can cooperate? 3, what has the fiscal framework of St. Lucia been given priority to over the past 4 years? What the government have been using the expenditure for over the past 4 years, whilst they were being warned that as you spend the country's money on things that are not significant, you are going and borrow for non-developmental purposes. You are narrowing the room for fiscal maneuver. And when there is an emergency, we will not be able to respond to that emergency. I have been saying that over the years in this honorable house, up to last year, during the debate on the estimates and of course the policy debate last year, Mr. Speaker. And what was the posture of members opposite? To disregard those warnings, like when Noah used to preach. But when God closed the door of the ark, not even Noah, they were bawling, but there's nothing Noah could have done for them. I encourage the government over the years to complete St. Jude's. They played games with St. Jude's. And now they are building a buika buak in the yard at the hospital. And COVID-19 has come. And had they pay attention to the hospital, a buika buak, some monstrosity, some warehouse, I don't know for what reason. And the 4th question is, what is the opportunity cost of using the $29 million US in the manner proposed by the Minister for Finance? Mr. Speaker, I now address myself to the very first question. Regarding the environment in which St. Lucians live. Mr. Speaker, St. Lucians are suffering at this particular point in time. And I'm hearing members opposite talking about all sorts of things, but do not appreciate the sufferings of the people of the country and play games by trying to attack the opposition that we are not supporting alone to help the people of St. Lucia. We are saying utilize all for the benefit of the people, and do not take resources and put it in any monstrosity and in any other capital venture at this point that are not COVID related. Mr. Speaker, people are suffering. The unemployed before COVID has been pushed down to deeper depths of insecurity and misery. Those who have lost their jobs have joined the unemployed. The inequality gap is getting wider. And of course, there is the threat of public servants not having the required disposable income to make an effective demand for goods and services in the country. All of those things are on the table. So there is great uncertainty, Mr. Speaker, in this country. But there is also the psychological issues of adjusting to COVID-19 in this environment. And you know, people have behaved in different ways to the lockdown, and this is why members opposite were insisting, despite the manner in which certain things were done by the government, stay indoors as much as possible, because we had to take a united front in dealing with COVID. But those things have deep psychological issues. But we are dealing with human beings and not horses. So you see, that in itself is a key issue, as we will see whilst I navigate my presentation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during the course of the debate, they were questioning members opposite and making all sorts of remarks about management of the economy, and we don't care about people. Mr. Speaker, the member for Viewfort South, as Prime Minister, had the best record of responding to the needs of the most vulnerable in this country. Best record. Best record. You can choose how you want, Honorable Member, through you, Mr. Speaker. The chops doesn't change the facts of history. The Kenny Anthony administration of 1997-2006 ushered in a new social order with new objectives and detailed programs to attain this. UWP propaganda over the years aimed at preventing the proper capture and documentation of the quantum change that took place during that period. Mr. Speaker, in terms of handling the business of the people, he did primarily through income poverty alleviation, human capital poverty alleviation, and asset poverty reduction. In terms of income poverty alleviation, so many programs were put in place, increasing the public assistance, the elderly care program, the STEP program, and of course, in terms of the disability benefits to help people. There was no COVID-19, but we were responding to the needs of the people of this country. Those who have been left behind, we helped catch up, Mr. Speaker. That was the emphasis of the Labour Party administration between 1997 and 2006, and again between 2011 and 2016. In terms of education, it provided thousands of families with school bursaries and scholarships to ensure that the children of toil went to school with worn, torn shoes, torn pants, ragged pants, all kind of things. We ensure through Poverty Reduction Fund, we gave them the necessary clothing, and of course, the books to equalize opportunity and to destroy privilege. We worked towards ensuring that every child had access to a secondary school, and we implemented universal secondary education. And of course, the laptop programs to further ensure that poor people who couldn't access a computer lab for hours during the SBA had that equipment to do their work in the comfort of their homes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in terms of healthcare, who organized all the health centers around the island, a new mental health facility, because we are conscious of the fact that health and well-being are important for economic development and for prosperity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in terms of water in vulnerable areas, who gave people more water connections all over St. Lucia? We did not have COVID-19. We did not need COVID-19 to know that we had to respond to the needs of the most vulnerable in this country. What about electricity? In terms of electric poles going all over the country, And people have never stopped hearing me in this house talking about Bouton, where the UWP wanted to relocate Bouton instead of bring electricity. And it took the Labour Party to plant poles and to bring electricity to the people of Bouton. You know, before the honorable member for Beaufort South, they considered the South a backwater. Most communities were without water, electricity, and basic infrastructure. The Mang, people in mud, no infrastructure today. They don't want you to call it the Mang. They call it the Manhattan, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in terms of asset capital poverty reduction, the honorable member for Beaufort South as Prime Minister gave access to the people of this country, to their lands. Many St. Lucians own the piece of land in this country. While under this government, they are giving hundreds of acres of land to foreigners, $1 per acre per year. Housing. The member for Beaufort South as Prime Minister, I'm sure he probably does not remember everything, but the low-income housing grant facility, which assisted hundreds of ordinary St. Lucians. And then he's conscious of the fact that a lot of people live on lands that did not belong to them. They hustled to build a little plywood house. And in the event that it got burnt, he put a distress fund in place, which was removed by this administration. And they want to look at us and talk about poor people, Mr. Speaker. And as we speak, even in this COVID-19 environment, some people in Choiseul that I know very well called me last night to complain that a road that was in very bad condition, they tried to fix it up to make it more motorable. And the legal officer has sent them a letter to go to court, threatening to take legal action against them. That if they do not return the road to its original condition, they're going to take them to court for making the road more motorable. And they solicited my advice and let them take the people to court. The road has been there. In this COVID-19 environment where people are supposed to be organizing themselves into that integrated whole so we can navigate the turbulence together and emerge victorious, we are looking for all types of things to divide ourselves. But the opposition will always provide support for what we must provide support for. But we are not going to be invited to things and become a mere appendage to the affairs of this administration. We have to be integrated into the business of things, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, you know, when people who just arrive in this house, in a hurry to attack people and to malign others, they always invent stories. I mean, all sorts of things from members opposite about their worst years of growth. You know, their worst is better than the best. We must not try to trivialize the contribution of the member for Beaufort South. We are passing through this world, Mr. Speaker, and we are called upon to make our contribution. We can have a debate, but never try to deprive somebody of what they have achieved and what they have contributed. Mr. Speaker, when the member for Beaufort South left office in 2006, the economy grew by over 5%, Mr. Speaker. 6%. Wealth was more evenly distributed in this country. So even though the economy had grown, let's look at how people live, Mr. Speaker. Unemployment was down in the vicinity of 13.6%, lowest in 15 years. And indigence was reduced significantly. Is that a failure? You call that report card a failure? Absolutely not, Mr. Speaker. And I'm not going to stay in this honorable house and see people engage in revisionism. History is history, and the records are there. In 2011, when we returned to office, we inherited a fiscal deficit of almost 10%, which of course would not permit you the necessary space to do what you wanted to do quickly. But at the end of our term in office, 2016, I will not go and look for figures to convince anybody, but I'll tell you, when we left in 2016, the reason why they could have borrowed like that and spent so many millions of dollars is because there was space to do so, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, during that very short space of time, they have spent $12 million for meat processing facility. They have spent tens of millions of dollars in relocating Beauséjour. And of course, from the sinking fund and from other funds, and even in these estimates, they have it for the convenience of Theo Aking. Permandu, $30 million. Another $100 million for Caribbean Jewels. Acquisition of shock swamplands for hire at over $40 million. And of course, we have a $40 million from our NIC funds that we need right now for Cabot links. All sorts of things that were not important and of no value to the development of the people of this country. And now to the very document that you gave me. It clearly states, Mr. Speaker, what the IMF has granted the facility for. And members on this side have articulated it. It clearly says IMF support will help cover some of these needs and allow the government to ease the impact on the population, such as upgrading public health facilities and providing social assistance to the vulnerable and adversely affected sectors. When they say public health facilities, they are talking about completing St. Jude's, not that monstrosity that you have there. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, in this environment that we're in the drought, whilst I cannot get water where I live on a continuous basis, just sometimes for 1 hour in the night that I have water, and during the day maybe an hour. But that's it. But they go to Larry Shoes opposite Dembo, the trucks that are mixing whatever they're mixing to pour concrete in that monstrosity in the St. Jude's yard. They are taking water from the fire hydrant. You know, in this environment, you know, I don't know if they stop now. But they were taking it because that's their priority. And like we have said on this side, can you imagine if those hotels were operating? What other schools were in motion? The kind of situation we probably would be under. So, Mr. Speaker, I do not want members opposite to try to paint a picture of members on this side as persons who don't care about people. We care so much that we are telling you to forget about all of those big projects you think will bring about growth and development in the country and focus on helping people navigate the turbulence of the moment so that we can get back on our feet again. Mr. Speaker, what I expected the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance and his government to do, given the fact that we had sudden losses of jobs and other dislocations, that the Prime Minister would find it necessary to give greater attention to mending and reinforcing the social fabric. In pursuing these objectives, Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia will be challenged to find an appropriate balance between government and collective effort. So given the uncertain and challenging nature of this coronavirus pandemic, the opposition expected the Prime Minister to provide leadership and to ensure a wider engagement with the St. Lucian people. Not just say, you come there and present some document and say, that's my document. I'm going to complete those projects and I don't really care what the opposition think. And if we on this side say to them, abandon some of those useless capital projects and invest it in people, because it's when you reduce poverty, when you stimulate employment, and we are not talking about taking monies and going and build that monstrosity. Take the money, you want to build, you want to engage in capital spending, complete St. Jude's, the original St. Jude's. Because you see what has been built there? That Tower of Babel, that will take money that we have not seen. And they gave a time frame for it to be completed. That's not a priority at this time. That's not a priority at this time, Mr. Speaker. So you see, Mr. Speaker, in this complex and fluid world situation, the Prime Minister should ensure consultation to initiate, furnish a focus for, sustain, expand, and perfect a flow of innovative ideas to help us solve many problems. At this point, he had a unique opportunity to bring this country together. Forget about all these confrontations before with the social partners that you have considered to be sectoral irritants. Bring everybody together, provide leadership. We are approaching the end of one term. Try to draw up an agenda that everybody could buy in so that we are able to continue the journey. Because the entire world with COVID-19 is looking for an entirely new beginning. And whoever would be Prime Minister today, the environment would be uncertain. Even the efforts of the Prime Minister to open up the country, it will be a challenge. And this is why we have expressed concern that it cannot be done in a manner for us to now have massive community spread because we have opened prematurely, and then we do not have the necessary health infrastructure to resolve or to respond to it. At the same time, any government would be anxious to resume normal navigation as far as the economy is concerned. We understand that. And this is why it's important that the opposition is respected and be an integral part of it, not a mere appendage to the affairs of the government, that they take their decision, he and the cabinet take a decision and come and tell us, oh, that's what we decided upon. No. Have everybody coming together and let us discuss this delicate matter, because it does not lend itself to easy solutions. And Mr. Speaker, like I have said, millions of dollars have been spent instead. The focus has been on horses. And even last year, when we knew that the coronavirus had started in China, and it was just a matter of time before it got to St. Lucia, where was the government? In a fete at the DSH site, the birth of horse racing, spending millions of dollars in the birth of horse racing in this country. Yo dépensé combien millions de dollars en baptême cheval? Baptême cheval. Millions of dollars in after-party activity, you know, in fete and bacchanal, whilst we're supposed to be preparing for COVID-19. So all the bacchanal, in December, we knew that, we knew that. No, that's why very early in the year, when the opposition leader realized that nothing is being said by the government, that the opposition was the one who took the lead and have a public conversation. A public conversation. You come and tell me about. And then they were planning another race in February. Zafayo Beltelma, they were planning another race in February. So over the last 4 years, they have spent all their time on horses at the expense of the people of this country. And now, you want the public servants now, because of COVID-19, to finance the pattern of expenditure and the pattern of consumption of leeches. Well, you spend all the money on horses. Go and ask the horses to buy the bonds. Go and ask the horses to buy the bonds. You spend all your money on horses. Fese cheval la gen bona, koto van chebon la, ay soukwe sakula. You know, and then, through you, Mr. Speaker, I went on your Facebook page, and I believe somebody had hacked your Facebook page, for me to see an open letter to the public sector unions, an open letter that was rude and disrespectful, very rude and disrespectful, to have an open letter. And then you say in your letter, and I quote, should our offer not be accepted, we will have to examine our legal option in order to ensure that we as a government can function, can meet our obligations, and can continue providing essential services to our citizens, unquote. You should have written an open letter to Cabot Links and T.O. King. You should have sent that to them, the open letter to them, not the public sector unions. That kind of behavior must not be tolerated in this country. And I hear you there telling the public servants, stop it. Like they're not supposed to get involved. Let me say something today in this honorable house. Politicians are here to provide political leadership. They must have the political acumen to lead. Don't ever believe that you're brighter or you're more experienced than public officers. When people come and talk about degree, they have degree and so degree makes them valuable. If you want degrees, go in the public service and in the teaching service. Say, look in degree. And yes, and they serve more than one administration, so they know. You know, firemen, nurses, everybody have degree now. Degree is commonplace. We have to respect people. You look at public officers are working hard, they're on the front line. Some of those nurses you're giving contracts for 3 months. They're in the front line fighting COVID. If anything happened to them, a little 3 months contract. What happens to them? We must resolve those issues. And that is what we have to do with monies that we get in this COVID environment. Make sure that those persons are catered for. Our police officers, our firemen, it's not good enough to go and have some fundraising activity and T.O. King give a little cacadan. You build a road, $13 million to accommodate T.O. King. Tell T.O. King give you your money. Tell T.O. King give us back our $14 million for the road we built for him. You know? And T.O. King come and give $200 and something thousand. And what? You know? That's not the way. And whilst the Labour Party has taken the position that, you know what, we are prepared to cooperate with every social partner in this country toward the development of St. Lucia without infringing on their independence and integrity. But I want people to understand, and I want this honorable house to appreciate, that the Labour Party was born out of the trade union movement. The trade union movement gave birth to the St. Lucia Labour Party. So there's an umbilical relationship, and we are not going to sever ties with the workers in terms of their respect. That is why, whether we're in opposition in government, is either we champion legislation to benefit workers or we pass legislation in government to benefit the workers of this country. And I heard talking about salary increases. You know, in 79 we gave 100% increase to daily paid workers and massive increases to other categories of workers. The highest ever in the history. You can even when you subtract 40% from it. You say 60? Who taught you mathematics?
Honorable member, continue.
Anyway, I will continue without the turbulence of members opposite that are confused. Yes. Now, I represent the constituency of Labrie. There are nurses. There are police officers. There are doctors. There are every category of government workers. And I represent those people. So it is my right to enter that conversation. No, it's not about convenience. There are people who just come to the house, and there are people who know the constituency. I was cooked and baked, born and raised in the People's Republic of Labrie, cooked and baked in that culture. Yes, I have a relationship with them, not like those who go and live in a place and they have a tenuous relationship with the people there. I have no tenuous relationship. I am a typical Laborian. You see, I will not fall easy prey to provocation. So I will take the advice of the Speaker to continue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it was also very important to note that whilst we talk about the horses, the good book has advice for members opposite. And the good book in Psalms 28-9, it says, and I quote, "Some boast of chariots, some boast of horses, but we boast in the name of the Lord our God. Their forces will collapse and be crushed, but ours shall rise and stand firm." Unquote. This is why, Mr. Speaker, in this very delicate environment, we are navigating with faith and soul force. So it does not matter what plans you have, God will decide what happens. And we are going to seek his wisdom to guide us in this very difficult moment, Mr. Speaker. And you know, Mr. Speaker, the God that I serve has said, you know what to do? You must retrofit the political procedures of the Labour Party to ensure that you maintain social distancing with all the protocols, but remain close to the issues that affect the people of this country. And this is why in this house and out of this house, we are going to continue the journey of bread, justice, and freedom. I know earlier my colleagues spoke about the National Trust issue. I believe the National Trust can take care of their affairs. And this was not the first episode. You withdrew $1.5 million subvention from the National Trust. It's no secret that you all have been attacking Mr. Tulsi. You all have even attacked Your Grace. And you know what you get when you attack, when you antagonize Father Kevin, you know, Janine Compton, everybody. You'll get pidemi, something they call pidemi. It is worse than Limier. When you have pidemi, it's incurable.
What is that?
So Limier is like a bacterial infection. You can treat it with antibiotics. But you see, pidemi is worse than COVID-19. The government for attacking. And you know it. And I'll tell you, when pidemi comes, it does not care if you're suffering from ACDS. It does not care whether you are suffering from ACDS. And I know, Mr. Speaker, that look means you are asking the honorable member for lab to say what ACDS means. It is acute cabinet distress syndrome. That's why all of them will say "I" when they know full well that it is not the right thing to do. They know it's not the right thing to do. They knew about the state of emergency. You know, they're not supposed to vote "I," but "I," because, you know, he's watching them to see what they're going to do. But you know, Mr. Speaker, the constituents are watching them. Basically in this environment, don't disturb me, honorable member for Soufrière. Basically, there is no state of emergency really in the country. There's a declaration of war on the people of this country and the Labour Party. So there's a state of war. You all declare war on the people of the country to do whatever you all want. To destroy the country and to destroy the people of the country, because up to now, your emphasis on horses, 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 not the people. I want you to use all that money, that $29 million US, for the people. The small business people, those who have barber shops and all of those little businesses that have been closed because we had to observe the protocol. They must be taken care of. They must be taken care of. All of them. All of them. So you all have to abandon all those capital projects that make absolutely no sense. And you all think you're clever and talk about you all trying to stimulate growth. Let me tell you something. There is no growth and development. When you talk about economic resilience, the first thing you do, you reduce poverty. And you deal with the most vulnerable if you want to have quality growth in the country. So you see, as I prepare to close, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that the opposition will not sit idly by and allow the Prime Minister and his gang to side with special interests, to twist the methods of the government machinery, to defeat the popular will of the people and to deny the people legitimate support. And Mr. Speaker, like I indicated a few moments ago, the campaign for bread, justice, and freedom shall continue because the people of this country demand bread, they demand justice, they demand freedom, even from foreign domination. A handful of parasites that are sapping St. Lucia's national strength and advancing savagely on the infamous road of self-seeking and greed. Mr. Speaker, as I close, I am proud to be a member of the St. Lucia Labour Party and a member of the opposition. We are about to celebrate 70-something years of struggle for bread, justice, and freedom. I am filled with the proud memories and contributions of past SLP administrations in this country to the welfare of the people and workers of this country. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, they risk their lives to ensure that much of the bread, justice, and freedom that we enjoy today are actually secured even when they have migrated to the silent continents of eternity. And this is why I'm standing in the symbolic shadow of my political father, Sir George F.L. Charles. So, Mr. Speaker, for my part, I can only re-echo the words of a great Russian writer, Nikolai Ostrowski, who said, and I quote, "Man's dearest possession is life, and since it's given him to live but once, he must so live as not to be besmeared with the shame of a cowardly existence and trivial past. So live as to have no torturing regrets for years without purpose. So live that dying he might say, all my life and all my strength were given to the finest cause in the world, the liberation of mankind. And it is to this aim I shall devote every moment of my time." Mr. Speaker, I am going to recommit to a fight to the finish, to re-establish order and normalcy in this country. I'm renewing my commitment to the public welfare and the people of this country. Mr. Speaker, I rest.